Welcome back. This is part 2 of our coverage of the disappearance and mysterious death of Megan Trussell. And we've got Vanessa and Joe, Megan's parents, with us. And make sure to check out part 1 before continuing forward into this episode here, because we kind of jump right into it in the beginning of this. So you definitely want to listen to part 1. Also, there are GoFundMe links in the show notes. Please check that out. This is a very expensive journey they're on, and if this story touches you, I think they would really appreciate any help you can give. If you have any information in the case, you can call or text 678-636-9771 or email trusselltips@vigilante-pr.com. Links in the show notes. Okay, thanks a lot for listening. We're going to break quick here for commercial, and we're going to return with Vanessa and Joe. It does seem weird from afar here that the roommate didn't want Megan bringing company into the dorm, but the roommate who, gave that order, I guess, was allowed to have a friend in there whenever she wanted.
Yeah, and I mean, Megan had a boyfriend and she's in college and she's having sex. And, I'm her dad and I'm totally okay with that. You're in college, you're exploring all these new experiences, you're doing all this new stuff. Me and Vanessa were both on the same page with that. We are not Puritans. We understand that you go to college, you get a boyfriend, you have sex with him. That's fine. She was on birth control. So any indication from the roommate that we would have had a problem with that, which is kind of what she enunciated in the People magazine article, is utter bullshit, for lack of a better word. Megan was free to live her life the way she wanted, and we were totally supportive of all of that.
Yeah, well, I have to add, one person that Megan actually couldn't talk about sex or anything like that with was the roommate, because she had past trauma herself. So, the first in August, or it was August or September, that first semester, Megan heard about this talk on campus. Actually, her sister had gone to it a couple of years before, and it's about the female orgasm. And so Megan called me after and she was like, "Oh my gosh, that was a really good presentation." And she was laughing because there was like this, as she called him, there was a frat boy who was like in the row in front of her and he is like taking copious notes and his friends are making fun of him. He was like, "Hey, this is important. Like, guys need to know this. Pay attention." And she thought that was hilarious. She's like, I guess guys do pay attention. So she told me all about it, right? She bought a shirt that says "I heart female orgasm." She got me a pin that says "I heart female orgasm." So like when the roommate implies that, that she said she sent some text to the boyfriend about, whatever happened with Megan, don't tell her parents that's what I walked into. I don't want her parents to see her in that light. And it's like, what are you talking about? You obviously don't know her, and you certainly don't know her parents. And it was just a weird statement for her to make. But she tries to paint us as these overbearing parents who, like, I don't know, use her. What she call us? She's called
Like
me
an emotional crutch or something.
So I mean, and this conversation probably shouldn't just be about her, but it's. I think it sheds light on, because people don't understand, like, why would she have left, right? Well, when she said he better not be there when I get back, well, Megan's like, "F you, I don't want to be here when you get back." And I think she put herself in a situation that she would never have done before. Like, she was pretty devastated, I'm sure, at the breakup. That was her first boyfriend. But like I mentioned before, Megan's been through tough things, and somehow she can always find a positive light. She's never ever been suicidal. She's never self-harmed, none of that.
Yeah, never
So
self-medicated, nothing like that. I mean, and she had, we split when she was a junior in high school. So she had every opportunity. I mean, that's a super traumatic thing for a teenager. but she didn't handle it that way. She handled it with grace. And I mean, I
And
know
she
it
got
was
a
traumatic
cat.
for her. Yeah, and she got a cat, but she was part of her laid back nature. When we split, I got an apartment 4 blocks from the house, just to make it easier for Megan, and so she went back and forth, and she wrote it out. She did a great job. So, in her sister's words, she would never kill herself over a boy. And I believe that. I know she was emotionally distressed that night. I mean, she was a sensitive person. She was also very smart. And she also had been taking her Adderall prescription for 4 years. And she knew damn well that you could not end your life with Adderall. You know, it's ridiculous.
Well, and they try to make it seem like she was stockpiling Adderall. You first of all, you really can't do that because there was a shortage. Like we would have to call around to different pharmacies just to get her prescription filled. Like there was a shortage of Adderall XR.
Yeah, and it's super heavily regulated because it's an amphetamine, right? So you can't double triple up your prescription, anything like that,
She had ADHD. The kid was she was a slob. She was a germaphobe, but she was also just she didn't throw anything away. So those bottles, and I already knew what those bottles were from. It was from September or no August, September, October, November.
Yeah, we're getting ahead.
Oh, yeah, I skipped a bunch of stuff in the middle. Well, because that was actually happening simultaneously, right? Like so they did the search with the dogs. I think they had 9 SARS dogs. They had 3 drones. One of them, they were bragging about how it was super high tech. Like it could even get such high definition photos and images, but you could also filter to identify certain colors. Like her hair is red, her pants are red, right? So those were all there. That was all on the 13th. On the 13th.
7 different agencies:
Yep.
Boulder Police, BCSO, CEPD. Yeah, search and rescue.
And then on Friday, they continued with the search, although I don't think they could do the drone flights on Friday because it was getting windy. But they still had dogs and people on foot. At the end of the search on the 13th, I talked to the coordinator for the whole search, and he said, I'm we've gotten up as far as we can, as far as places that you really couldn't get to on foot. And I was like, well, how the hell do you think she would get up there? And he said, but this area right around here, and it was kind of in the area where they eventually found her body. He said, this I'm not so sure about. Like, I think, so we're going to come back out tomorrow. So there were more people out there searching on the 14th as well.
And it's worth mentioning that while this was going on simultaneously, our friends had organized a massive canvassing effort around Boulder. We had friends, from our entire lives in Denver, who showed up, hundreds of people, to go business to business, house to house, handing out flyers, asking people if they'd seen anything, all over Boulder on Thursday and Friday, which was extremely overwhelming for us. We're not expecting that level of support, but it was awesome. Those people deserve a lot of credit for coming out and taking their time to search for Megan. Really appreciate that.
So on the evening or on the afternoon, I think it was about 3 o'clock on Valentine's Day on the 14th, they officially called off they ended their search. They said, we've done a thorough job. She's not here. On the 15th, we were like, okay, fine. We're just going to get our own search team together. We bought, we bought some
Metal detectors.
metal detectors. We had people like in teams. It was very coordinated. Our friend Beverly actually did it. She got a map of the area and she assigned people certain places. So just as they were about to, some teams had already taken off to go look in the areas they were assigned to, but other teams were just about to go and they closed the road. And my heart sank. Like we were sitting there.
Yeah, we knew.
We knew. I mean, because it was our own command central was at the library in the parking lot of the library, and Joe was up with the search team up there.
Yeah, we went down to the mouth of Boulder Canyon, and they had EMT fire trucks and all that blocking the canyon. And I walked up, and all the EMT guys had a look on their face, and they said, "We can't tell you anything. We can't have you standing here." So me and a couple of friends in my search party went and stood behind the one of the fire trucks, and a sheriff's deputy truck came down from the canyon, and this deputy walked up, and I said, "Do you know who I am?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "I can't tell you," but he had tears in his eyes. So
we found out. So going back, the way they found her was that on February 13th, there were these two men they had planned to have waders and to search in the creek itself. However, it was frozen solid, so they couldn't walk in the creek. So there was one guy who was on the north side of the bank of the creek, and the other guy was on the south side. One of the guys, the one on the north side, said, "Hey, there's a culvert over here. Come check this out." So the guy on the south side, he was up higher. There's a very, very, very narrow trail next to the highway. It's not really a very safe place to walk. And it's not like a hiking trail. It's just people walk there when, I think, in the summer, a lot of people go swimming in the creek. And that's one of the good spots there. I was up there back in June, and there were people sunbathing on those rocks right there near where her body was found. I was like, you guys don't even know that my daughter was here dead. So anyway, the guy that's on the south side, he comes down to the culvert, steps inside it. Her body was 8 feet from where he was standing, right below her. Her bright red hair, her bright red pants. The guy across on the north side is looking over her body, talking to the guy at the culvert. The guy at the culvert looks inside. He's like, "Hey, there's a backpack in here." He picks the backpack up, and there was a prescription bottle behind the backpack. He looked at it and read Megan's doctor's name and said, "Oh, that's not her." So he put the backpack back, but he noted it in his however they used to communicate. This is what I don't understand, is that they were right there. I don't understand how they didn't see her. So on the 15th, one of the rangers was reading those reports, and he was like, let's go check out that backpack with his team. So they went over there, and I think the way they got there was maybe going through that culvert. And the minute he stepped outside of the culvert, he looked down and saw her. How come the other guy was standing right there and didn't see her?
And was talking to his partner in the line of sight, 20, 30 feet away across the creek.
Yeah.
And they're right there. And we have Vanessa, and we share those photos with them at some point. We have photos of this whole scene, obviously not the crime scene, but the area. There is no way they could have missed her. There's no way. This is not a sheer cliff. This is not a drop off. This is rock that they use to buttress the highway, on a creek side. There's a lot of that here in Colorado, and it's climbable, but it's if you're standing at the culvert, you are and looking at the creek, you're looking directly where Megan's body was found. There's no way that she was there when these guys were talking to each other.
And they're there to find someone.
They are search and rescue volunteers.
Yeah, it's not like a couple of fishermen who weren't expecting anything.
Right. They're searching. And I feel bad for the guy who picked up the pill bottle, because when he found out that the pill bottle was actually Megan's and that's where her body was found, he was extremely distraught, according to the reports. I would like to reach out to him. And
well, I want to reach out to him because I want to find out who his partner was, because Boulder County never interviewed his partner.
That's the difference between me and Vanessa. I want to give the guy a hug, and Vanessa wants more information.
Yeah, that's a very good.
Yeah. Both are great points. Both are great intentions. You gotta take that with whatever. He didn't quite do the job that he was supposed to do. He didn't be as thorough as he should have been, but still, that he's a human being. So,
and the fact that they noted that in the report, that he was distraught over what happened. I think he was on a plane to New York for work when he found out where he had been and where they found her and about the bottle. And he was like, the detective had to tell him, it's okay, you did your best.
And mind you, it hadn't snowed yet. So when you
Yeah.
read the reports, it says that she's buried under like there's 2 inches of snow. Well, it started dumping on Saturday morning, like the big fluffy heavy kind of snow.
Man, it was like Mother Nature was telling us not to continue to search. I mean, that was a massive storm. I mean, it was just piling up that morning, and it was impossible. I went up with some guys to the top of Flagstaff Mountain, was one of the areas we were searching, and it was so treacherous just getting up there in a Toyota Land Cruiser that we had to turn around and come back down. Like, I mean, it was a nasty day, but it had been clear and cold and sunny, too cold to snow for the days leading up to that. So when they were doing the search in the canyon, you didn't have 2 feet of snow on the ground. But then when they found her, it had already snowed like 3 or 4 inches up there. So again, just does not make
They
sense.
specifically described that she had 2 inches of snow on her. She was frozen, but I mean, she could have frozen that overnight because that night was really cold. But I'm telling you, I really don't think she was there. The dogs didn't smell her. The dogs were right there too, right? That drone, for some reason, the drone that it didn't, when it doesn't pick anything up, or if there's too much bright light and there's not enough, like if there's nothing to see, it doesn't even record. So it's like, if she was there, that was something to see, right? So if it didn't record anything because there's nothing to see, that means there was nothing to see, is the way I see it, right? They tried to enhance the video and they're like, no, can't enhance it, which I think is also BS.
Whose drone was it? Was it the search and rescue team's drone?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were 3 though. And I think they were from different agencies maybe.
Do you know if they had like heat technology on there?
Yeah, these are state of the art.
Crazy high tech, like the top of the line drone you could possibly get.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program. So this officer found the pill bottle that was Megan's next to or under a backpack. It hadn't snowed yet. The officers were talking right there at that spot, and then
Volunteers,
later,
not officers.
volunteers.
Yeah,
Okay,
officers, volunteers.
sorry,
yeah.
volunteers. So then later, it snowed and covered Megan to some degree. But before that, when the volunteers were out there, there was no snow, and she, if her backpack was right there, she should have been right there, right?
It's not her backpack either.
Right. Well,
It wasn't her backpack?
and it's, it might be worth noting, there's always a little bit of snow up there that time of year.
Yep.
Because storms blow through, and if it's on the shadow side of the canyon, then, you have residual snow that's always up there. But it hadn't snowed since any of this happened, I don't think.
So she would have been on top of any snow that was there
Right.
already
Right.
that hadn't melted. So, and when they describe her, so actually Haley Gray, do you guys know Haley Gray? So I actually shared all of the photos with her. We had a private investigator, and we just decided to separate. Like he wasn't working at a pace that Joe and I were demanding. So anyway, Haley Gray has the picture. Yeah, we're kind of intense people sometimes, I guess.
Well, we're running an organization. It's a business basically, and if you're not performing to expectations, then you get shown the door, and we find somebody who can do the job. I mean, obviously, we are dead serious about this. Anyway.
So Haley Gray looked at the crime scene photos because obviously I don't want to see them. Joe doesn't want to see them. So she looked at them, and she said she actually is completely convinced. She's like, there is no way they could have missed her, because the shirt she's wearing is a TV Girl shirt, which is a band. Joe's like, who? But that was like her favorite band at the moment was TV Girl, and it has bright pink on one side of it and then bright blue, and Haley was like, that bright blue shirt really stands out. Her red hair was peeking out, and you can see her red pants. She said there's no way they didn't see her. There's no way she was there that whole time. So, it just calls into question that they called the search off on Friday at 2 or 3 or 4, right? And people know that they called off the search, that it was, they were going to stop. And then all of a sudden her body shows up in the exact spot that was already searched. It's very suspicious. There's these trees that are right there by that culvert that, on this tree is a sign that says Boulder County this way. And the other one is like, okay, this is the end of the city of Boulder. So it was right over, like 7 feet past where it would become Boulder County.
Yeah, the jurisdiction line, and that's how the detective or somebody in law enforcement explained it to us. Well, she was right on a jurisdiction line, so maybe we didn't search that area enough. It's like, and I talked to a friend who's a homicide sergeant in Louisiana, and he said, I've been on 1,000 search and rescues, and jurisdiction lines do not come into play. He said that is an excuse. He said that's not valid.
But the
So
fact is, they did search. Like they had 2 guys standing right there, feet from her body. Feet.
Yeah, I mean, a jurisdiction line doesn't make something invisible.
No, right. Yeah, whoever said that, it's like, I don't know why you would say that. Like, making excuses. So it was a very long summer, or it was a very long, I took a leave of absence, which was really hard for me to do, but there's no way I could be present here in my job and having all of this go on. So we hired a lawyer just because the investigation wasn't really going the direction. Like it just, I know that detectives can't share anything with you, like specifically, right? But I felt like there was a lot of things that they were just ignoring, and
that's a whole other storyline. But after we met with a detective, and we're very unhappy with the interview we had with him, and we were unhappy with a lot of things with him leading up to this interview, he told us about her missing shoe.
You didn't tell us though. The ranger
Ranger told us, yeah. So, but they didn't. The detective didn't tell us anything. Any of the evidence was confidential or anything like that. So, Vanessa posted on Facebook, she was missing a shoe, her purse is missing, her phone's missing, and the next morning, Boulder County Sheriff's Office came out with a press release that said, there is no threat to the community, there is no indication of foul play, and that was a direct assault on what Vanessa had said on Facebook, and I identified that, or we did. And I told Vanessa, I said, we need a lawyer because we're no longer in a good relationship with BCSO. That press release, in my mind, was adversarial, and we're kind of out of our depth. We need to find a lawyer. And as I've said, I mean, when you drink beer with half of Denver for 30 years, you make friends, and you make lots of good friends. And we have lots of friends who are attorneys, and they all kind of pointed us to the same place to get this attorney that we ended up with. So that's when she came on board, because we knew that we were kind of out of our depth if we were going to be, if they were going to treat us as not as partners but as enemies in this case. And that's where things really went downhill with the Boulder County Sheriff's Office.
As far as recommendations to make to other families who are going through this, I don't know that I would recommend getting a lawyer, because I don't feel like that helped at all. Because Boulder County already they were convinced it was suicide from the day they found out she was missing, right? Like when Boulder County got involved, it was always going to be a suicide. And when you read all of the reports, every single detective or deputy or whoever is on scene starts with the whole they found 3 pill bottles in her dorm. She got in a fight with her boyfriend and her girl and her roommate and blah, blah, blah. And she's distressed and like, poor little girl, right? So every single report starts that way. They had a narrative from the start. The only evidence they looked for was evidence that would point to that. They didn't look at anything that would point anywhere else. So, it's important to note also that her purse showed up 5 miles away next to a different culvert, by the way. Strangely, almost the same mile marker, like is between 39 and 40. And that was where her body was found. So it's a whole different highway though. It's 39. It's mile marker 39.6 on US 36. And this woman who was riding her bike went by, and she had seen the posters, like the purse. I made the purse. I don't know if you guys know that part, but that's just a hobby. And when we do cosplay or costumes for anything, it like has to be authentic. So Megan wanted this purse from Scott Pilgrim Saves the Universe, which is a comic, but also a movie. So she wanted this Ramona Flowers bag. And so I sold her one. And I do pretty good work. I actually have a very special sewing machine. It can sew through 15 layers of denim. So the fabric on that purse is actually upholstery grade vinyl. So it's very thick. And it also has a lining, and then it has some binding inside of it. So when I sewed that strap, there's like a tab that holds a D-ring, and I reinforced that seam. Well, when the detective did tell us they found the purse. The lady didn't think they were going to, because when she went by, she was like, they didn't even collect anything. Like, they left a bunch of stuff here. She thought it should be marked off as like cordoned off as like a crime scene. So she saw it, went where she was going, and then came back, and they were gone. She was like, I don't think they're going to tell you. So she sent me an email. She found me at work and sent me an email that I found your daughter's purse. I don't think they're going to tell you that. Anyway, the detective did end up calling to say that he found it, and he sent me a picture of the contents to see if there was anything missing. Her phone and her headphones. Her phone and her earbuds are both missing. And then I zoomed in, and they deliberately looked like to me that they tried to cut off this picture, right? Like, where I could see that the seam was ripped out. That's what it looked like, at least. But when I looked closer, the seam actually held up, but the fabric, which I told you was upholstery grade vinyl, was shredded. That was the part that failed, not the seam. But you have to think of how much force that would have taken, right? So she carries her purse on her right side to her left. She was missing her right shoe. She has injuries all over her left side of her body. The teeth that are broken are on her left side of her face. It's a subgaleal hematoma. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's on the back of her head. I learned from a physician that that's usually caused by violent hair pulling. It's not a common injury for adults. That's not an injury you get from falling down on a boulder. But she also has injuries she has injuries everywhere. After the autopsy, they called me and Joe and told us that they couldn't see any signs of trauma, which is a freaking lie, other than a scratch on her hip and an enormous volume of pill material in her stomach and esophagus. And we didn't put it together at the moment about, how much Adderall she had and what they were describing. Her body, once we did get the autopsy, her body sounds like she was involved in a struggle, for sure. But they completely denied that. When they finally came out with the autopsy, which that was a fight to get, they just wanted to give it to our lawyer. They just wanted to tell it to our lawyer so that she could tell us and soften us. And I'm like, but we don't get to ask anything? That's BS. So we are actually going to have a protest up there. Somehow they caved in, and they're like, okay, we'll have, but they can be there, but they can't ask any questions. And I'm like, fine, I just don't why should my lawyer find out what happened to my daughter or what you think happened to my daughter before me? I don't want that to be filtered. So they had a meeting, it was virtual, and we started asking questions, and they basically said, so it's suicide. They're ruling it as suicide, but she actually died of hypothermia and the toxic effects of amphetamine, which is Adderall. So we asked questions, but they said, oh, that's for the forensic pathologist, right? So the coroner, he just signs off on it, but this forensic pathologist is the one who makes all the decisions. So they finally scheduled a meeting with her on June 4th. And we took our friend Beverly, who's a nurse, and she had some very specific questions that she asked, and we asked other questions, and it was a pretty contentious meeting, which we recorded, by the way, and thank goodness we did, because there are some things that she says, that the forensic pathologist says in there, that are like, that doesn't sound like you're doing your job. So she really dismissed any of Beverly's questions about the injuries. She said, no, it's consistent with the area. I asked, well, have you been there? And she said, no, but I've seen pictures, and and our people were there. And I was like, yeah, when it was covered in ice or covered in snow, but that wasn't the situation when Megan first, if she climbed down there herself, then you need to know what they could have looked like at that time before there was snow on it. But she she was very stubborn and stuck in her, like, she was not going to explain anything to us. In fact, she even said at one point, I'm not going to make a guess or something like that. Haley actually quoted her in it. Like, it's not their job to guess what happened to her. Yet they're making a determination that it was suicide and completely ignoring and dismissing any of these other things. So she said, well, none of those things caused her death. Okay, that didn't cause her death, but was it an indication or evidence of a struggle? Evidence that she was taken against her will, right? That's what it sounds like to me.
She couldn't speculate. The vibe I got from the forensic pathologist was, that's not my job. Like, if we asked any questions outside of the actual examination. But I asked her, okay, so suicide by hypothermia, toxic effects of Adderall. I said, if a guy gets drunk on the beach and then swims out into the ocean and drowns, is that a suicide? And she said, well, does he have a lethal amount of alcohol in his system? And I said, Megan didn't have a lethal amount of Adderall in her system. And that ended that line of questioning. She didn't have a response for me on that. And by that point, she was so pissed off that she wasn't really answering anything, because as we found with a lot of, several law enforcement people we've talked to, they're not expecting Vanessa and me. They don't understand what they're walking into, because not only do we work well together, but we also cross-examine very well together. And we are grieving, but we're not pushovers and we're not weak. And they think they can treat us a certain way, and then they get us in a room. That poor detective had no idea what was coming when he sat down with us in an interview, because we worked him over and frustrated him to death, and he could not answer our questions. And the same thing happened with the forensic pathologists. They continue to make the same mistakes. They continue to underestimate us. And eventually it's going to bite them on the ass. Excuse my French.
And that leads me to my next point. So one of the things she said in that conversation was that, because we're like, okay, so she didn't have a lethal amount of Adderall. It's like 1900, which is, it's barely toxic, right? I mean, and it might not be toxic for somebody who's been taking it for 4 years. Like, they have no idea. You can't project, or you can't even think how that would have affected Megan's mental state, right? So she said, well, no, it's because of the sheer volume of pill material in her stomach and esophagus. And somebody else had described it as a softball. And that's when it hit me. I was like, there's no freaking way that's Adderall. Nobody has that much Adderall. Like a softball size? Like, because once you get the little pills out of those capsules, it's tiny. So I asked her, I said, well, did you test the whole thing? And they all kind of looked nervous. And they were like looking at each other. And I was like, did you test it? No. We tested her blood. And I was like, did you test the mass in her stomach and esophagus? Because she described it also that it was so much that the lumen in the esophagus was distended. Like, she tried to use fancy language on us. Like, I can infer what that means, but that sounds to me like it was shoved down her throat. Okay. And she has broken teeth. She has bruising and abrasions inside her mouth, on her face, back here, like it was being held in her. Like, I can picture how those injuries might have gotten there by forced ingestion. Why they would do that, I don't know that yet. But yeah, she said the whole reason was based on that sheer volume, right? So they never had it tested.
It was described as a softball size in her esophagus?
In her stomach.
In her stomach.
And coming up in her stomach. She said that it could creep up into her esophagus post-mortem, but it wouldn't create that much distension from what we understand.
I'm not like a biologist or even close to understanding the science of the human body, but when does stomach, I'm so sorry to ask this, I have no idea. When does stomach acid stop breaking things down? I'm just wondering, how did it continue to exist in a human body in the stomach when stomach, they're designed to break things down? How is it still a softball?
And so Beverly actually asked that question. She was like, so did you test anything to see if it was going down or coming up? Like, was it actually, had it been in the stomach? Did it have stomach acid in it? And no, because they never tested any of it, right? So I asked, well, did you take a sample? Do you have it? Do you still have the mass? And they were like, and that actually I feel like it took forever for them to answer that. But it was probably just a few seconds. But yes, they did. They took a sample of it. So when I went back and reread the autopsy, it was 150 milliliters of pill material and 50 milliliters of tan fluid. There's no description of any of the capsules, which are bright orange. And so they sent 35 milliliter sample. It also bothers me that they said it was consistent throughout, but it's obviously not consistent if it's 150 milliliters of pill material and 50 milliliters of tan fluid. So then I'm wondering, like, what is this concentrate? Like the concentration of where you decided to take the sample from, how do you know it's consistent? Like, that's not how you would. I'm also not a scientist, but I know that if you're going to try to get a consistent sample, you should emulsify it, like, but they didn't do that. So they did send in the 35 milliliters after Joe lost his mind. And no, he didn't lose his mind. He was just very stern.
Well, it's like a business. It's a business problem as far as I'm concerned. It's like, I'm asking you to do something, do it. I don't get a response. It's like, okay, you have until end of day today to give me a response that you're going to do this. Otherwise, you're going to face consequences. And in this case, consequences would be I'd call Steve Steger, you know? So yeah, every once in a while we've had to lean on him to get something done. I mean, we have a little bit of leverage, not a lot.
I feel like we have more with the coroner than we do with the.
I feel like the coroner's a good guy. I really do. Not very courageous, but I feel like he knows. I feel like he knows.
Something interesting he said at the end of that interview, or the end of that conversation, was, so just so you know, Joe and Vanessa, he seemed contrite. He said, we are not like law enforcement. We're not like the sheriff's office. If we get new information, we can change it. We can change the ruling. So
that's
that gives
good.
me an opening, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also I feel like the wording was like, what is he telling us here? Like, I don't know if he meant to tell us that about Boulder County, but to me, it really feels like, Boulder County, the sheriff was basically telling him what he needed to say about her death.
That's good to hear. It did stand out to me that the coroner, Jeff Martin, stated our opinion was based on several factors, including but not limited to toxicology results. So that just goes to show that they're counting their investigation, whatever circumstances they deemed relevant as part of their final finding,
Well, but they also, and Vanessa can speak more to this, the sheriff's office reached out to Vanessa about Megan's therapist.
No, the coroner did.
Oh, the coroner did, because Megan had been in therapy since we got divorced. Therapy is good for everybody. But they wanted to reach out to the therapist to get records to see if there had been any suicidal ideations. But Vanessa can explain this better. The therapist is a mandatory reporter. If Megan had had any suicidal ideations as a minor, we would have been notified of it, and she never did. Because I think they were trying to buttress their suicide narrative. The coroner was, if we can find evidence of this in her psychiatric past, then that bolsters our case. But there was nothing there, and the therapist was pissed. Oof.
Oh yeah, she called me actually. She can give me all of her files now because we went the legal route, and I'm her legal representative in her death, and so we know we needed that in order to get any autopsy files or to get medical records. So I have that now, and I'll go that path if I need to. But going back to the contents of her stomach, so they did send it in. They sent in for the gastric contents, and when they came back, it said there's 1.7 million nanograms per milliliter of the stomach contents, which, when I first saw that, I actually was incredibly depressed. and I was traveling abroad, that I didn't want to do that, but everybody was like, you need to do that. And getting that news was just pretty devastating. But when I got back, I was back into my, all right, let's fix the problem. Let's solve the problem. Like, what does this even mean? Like, you put this out there, but what does it mean, right? So I started doing crude calculations. I'm not a scientist. So right now we're getting this verified through an independent private forensic toxicologist. However, when you do the calculations, and this is where I totally get in the weeds, and Joe's like, here she goes. That percent, it sounds really high because it's pure. It's like it's the pure medication, right? It's not diluted in your bloodstream. So it actually ends up being just 5 to 7% of that total mass. So whatever it is that's in her stomach that they say is pill material is not even pill material, nor is it any other drug that came up on the test on the labs, the NMS toxicology tests. Nothing that would have killed her.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program.
So this mass that was the size of a softball, was that something that could have formed into a softball size after it was swallowed? Because I'm wondering how she wasn't asphyxiated by swallowing all of that in the first place.
Well, it was granule material, so it was pure speculation how it got there, but it didn't go in as a softball size. It went in and formed in the stomach.
It became this like
I think mass. When they took it out of, so they took it all out, right? And basically put it on a scale to measure it or whatever. I'm not sure they got all of it out anyway, because the way they describe it is like they're tiny little beads. But they're saying that the whole thing is those tiny little beads. But it is not. There might be the actual Adderall beads mixed in there. What it reminds me of is, have you ever heard of moon dough? It's kind of like Play-Doh, except it's got little pellets in it.
Oh, okay.
And so that's the way I picture whatever it is. But when you look at the concentration and how that concentration would play out in whatever they had, it's 5 to 7%. And I asked the coroner, I said, what is the rest of it? He said, well, we don't test for anything else. I said, is it food? Is it freaking applesauce? Like, what is it? And he said, well, we don't do that. Like, we don't, she has Adderall. She has a huge amount of Adderall. And I'm like, it's really not that much though. Like, that's maybe 10 capsules.
Well, yeah. And they didn't test like for volume. They test, like, the way I understand it, they took a sample of the stomach contents and tested it the way you would test blood, right? So blood, you're going to have uniform concentration throughout your bloodstream once your body processes something. Whereas with this, you have these different types of material in that stomach mass. They take a little piece of it, to Vanessa's point about emulsifying, and they do a concentration test. That's not the same as blood work. Your gastric system doesn't work the same way. So how they can extrapolate that was the concentration throughout that mass by taking a small amount, it doesn't make sense. And it doesn't sound like good science to me.
No, it's not.
Well, wouldn't you, not to get all into the minutia on this, but I'm just trying to understand the mechanics of even swallowing that much of anything.
Right.
Wouldn't you need water to help that go down? Wouldn't you need some sort of like lubrication to get...
Wouldn't there be a water bottle, right?
Something.
Yeah. I mean, that's, to me, foundationally about this. Like, we can talk about where she was and who she was with and contact and all that kind of stuff, but, and suicidal ideations and all that stuff. But when you see where she was found, and everybody we've taken to that spot says the same thing, how in the hell did she get here? There's no way she got here on her own. People who have lived in Boulder for 20, 30 years are like, I had no idea that this spot existed. That, number one. And number two, the mechanics of how that material got into her body, nobody can explain that to me. So to your point.
I'm sorry. How? And we have to, I at least have to preface this by saying, we're talking to the two of you. You're her parents. We haven't talked to law enforcement. So, there's always many sides to these things. But by talking to you and understanding how you raised Megan, even by saying like she went to therapy because therapy is good. Like that doesn't mean you're suicidal. That doesn't mean you have suicidal thoughts. I'm just wondering, like it irritates me that there are many, many, many other factors here that suggest something other than suicide. Like you have two supportive parents who are obviously supportive. I mean, Vanessa, you've been in education for 30 years. You have figured out how to raise so many children, you know what I mean? Like hundreds of children. So how is it that all of that family structure broke down and she became suicidal and then became so frail? Her first boyfriend at college just absolutely crushed her, when there's so many other things that point elsewhere. Like that irritates me. There's no real question to what I'm saying. It's so boggling to me that it's suicide and not like, well, let's look at all of the other things that are on her body. All of the damage that has been done is not consistent with suicide. The fact that you're even keeping your cool together right now is astounding. To me.
Well, we have to live this every day. Most people, you lose a loved one, you have a memorial, you settle in with your grief, and you move forward. We don't get to do that. We live this every single day. So you become familiar with it. You become accustomed to it. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying that's how it is, and we can talk about it because we have to, because we're trying to solve a problem.
Well, and there's other factors, that keep us going, right? Like Joe said, to clear her name. She would never kill herself. She wouldn't do that. And there's a few reasons. And so she certainly wouldn't have done it with Adderall. So she was pretty fascinated by the whole Britney Spears meltdown. And she watched, there's some show about it. And actually her and I watched it together. And when she realized that like Britney's meltdown came from her abusing Adderall, like she basically had a psychotic break because she wasn't sleeping and she was just taking a lot of methamphetamine. Not methamphetamine, which people always try to say that Megan was a drug addict and that she was on meth, but it's not meth. It's a prescription medication that was used to treat her ADHD. So the fact that Megan knew that you could get psychosis from taking too much Adderall. She absolutely knew that. And if you were hell-bent on ending your life in such a complex way, in such a weird place, she wouldn't have done that with Adderall. She was also a saver, and she was incredibly generous. She bought me a freaking Dyson blow dryer for Mother's Day one year, which those are really expensive. And of course she got to use it too. So she, but this just, she worked pretty hard. She had a job at a pizza place close to our house. And she saved her money. And at the time of her death, she had $3,000 in her savings account. She could have stopped at a store and gotten something that would have been more effective and maybe not as with so many possible loose ends. Like she also would have known that she didn't even have enough Adderall for it to be lethal. But for her to even run the risk of absolutely losing her mind and ending up in a mental hospital, that would have been terrifying for her. Like it's not something she would have done. Like she had the means to do it another way if she were to do it, right? But they never even took that into account. One thing I do need to add is that she had 2 prescriptions. So that second semester, and her doctor was her doctor since birth. She's never had a different doctor than the one who that prescribed her medication. She never had any history of abusing it. She never requested her pills to get filled early. In fact, she would go, like in the summer, she didn't take it every day. She only took it when she needed to. And so when the second semester started, she had a class that didn't start until like 12:30 or something. And so her Adderall, the extended release, if you take it too late, you can't sleep. So she had some, what's that stuff called? What do you take for seasickness? Dramamine. She had some Dramamine in her purse, apparently. And Lindsay, her sister, told me that that would help her sleep at night. Okay, so she asked me, do you think Dr. Scott would give me a prescription for immediate release so that I could just take that on the days when I can sleep in, because she also loved to sleep. Like that was probably one of her other favorite things. Sleep and watch movies. The doctor wrote her prescription. It was 20 milligrams of immediate release. So that was actually the bottle that was empty, found near her body, but it was in the culvert behind the backpack near her body. That is not the description of what the doctors say was in her stomach. They say it was consistent with Adderall XR. That pill bottle was in her purse 5 miles away. That's where that was found. Do you hear my point? So if she took all that, it was still in her stomach, not digested yet. How did that pill bottle should have been the one next to her body, right?
Yeah.
With the water. No, that was the one that they found 5 miles away in her purse.
And was that pill bottle empty?
Yep. Although the lady who found the purse, she opened the purse and she pulled out the bottle, and she thinks there were pills. There were still some capsules in it, but she wishes she took a picture, but she didn't. They told me it was empty.
Wait, so did she tell you that there were pills in it?
Mm-hmm. The lady who found it, yeah.
And then you were told it was empty by
Boulder County.
Boulder County.
Yeah. Who are pushing a narrative about suicide, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm honestly not a huge conspiracy person. Maybe
I'm not either.
I'll pick mine, for fun, but I'm sorry if you find a pill bottle and you're talking to the mother of this individual who's no longer with us and it's suspicious or whatever. I'm sorry. You pick up a pill bottle. What's your first thing? What's the first thing? You hear the pills in there. You don't misremember hearing pills or not hearing pills. It's connected to something. That's your first thing. If I were to find a pill bottle, my first processing thought would be, are there pills in here? Not reading the name. Maybe I'll read the name, but you shake it. Is there anything in here?
Yeah.
You don't misremember that. Maybe, but
yeah. And so she saw Megan's name on it, and she put it back and set it back down where she found it, and then called the police, and then called the sheriff.
Right. So she had the wherewithal to put the pill bottle down and call the sheriff.
Yeah.
So she's obviously still taking, being accountable for everything that's happening, and she wants to make sure she's not interrupting any sort of, I don't know, chain of custody or anything like that. So that just furthers the point of okay, I'm gonna make a mental note. Were there pills in there?
So what are your goals with the case? I understand you're trying to get it reopened.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, the first thing we have to do is get them to change the suicide determination, right? And so the easiest way to do that, from my perspective, is to dispute the stomach contents. I mean, she very clearly, I have it recorded, I have quotes, said that it's the sheer volume, that she called it, somebody who takes that much pill material or whatever, it's a volitive act. And I was like, but there's not even any proof that she took it herself, right? So it's a volitive act. And when, we actually have a forensic toxicologist who's doing that work right now, so that we have an expert, not just me and my own math. I have a friend who's actually a pharmacist, and he verified that, but he's not a forensic toxicologist, right? Just a pharmacist. But he agreed with my calculations. So I knew I wasn't way off base. So we're working on that. We're going to present it to the coroner through our lawyer. There's some other evidence, she has another expert that she's been working with, our lawyer. And so we're just trying to compile all of this together and say, hey, at the very least, but I don't even know how they could say it's an accident with that though, right? Maybe they can do, what's the other one? Undetermined.
Right.
I don't know that they're going to go out and say homicide. They're not going to.
Yeah, I doubt that. But
they're digging their heels in, right? But, anytime we asked the DA to reopen it. And his response was, the coroner's report is substantial. The empty pill bottles of the girl, who has ADHD and never throws anything. When I cleaned out her room, she had 6 more bottles in her room that were empty, by the way. So the DA is like, nope. They did a thorough investigation. I'm like, the crap they did. They sent nothing in for forensic testing. Nothing. Except for toxicology. That's the only thing they sent in. They did neck swab, they did a rape kit, they did fingernail scrapings, They did everything. There's a pair of pants that her body was on top of. Haley Gray actually looked at that. She looked at the pictures, and they're a size small. Megan didn't wear a size small anything, but yet in the report they claim those are Megan's pants. So she was seen on camera wearing red pants, right? Then they claimed that it was paradoxical in dressing, right? So this jacket sleeve on the left side, by the way, is also ripped. So her arm was through where the rip was, almost like somebody was putting her jacket back on her, but couldn't get the sleeve, couldn't, because it wasn't connected anymore. So her arm is out of the jacket. And then the sleeve is wrapped around her, like a scarf around her neck. She's on top of this filthy, filthy pair of gray pants. And they're saying, I don't know if the sleeve ripping is also paradoxical in dressing, but the sleeve is ripped. Stupid. And then the pants that were hers that she supposedly took off. But then, okay, you take those off, but then you put the red ones back on, and those pants are filthy. And Haley Gray is looking at it from the scene. They didn't give us the pictures from the autopsy of what the pants looked like, but she could read the tag, and it was size small, not hers. Absolutely not hers. But why were they under her body?
And no testing has been done to the pants.
No testing's been done to anything.
That's insane. Like, how did they look at her pants that she's currently wearing and note the size and then say this isn't even the same size? We should test them.
Part of the issue with, we presented the reports to other law enforcement, the DA. If you, and those reports are public, if you look at them without context, if you look at just the words written on the paper, then I can see, playing devil's advocate, I can see where you would make the assumption of suicide. I really can. But that's within those reports, within those written words by those detectives who had this presupposition of suicide. If you look at all the things that Vanessa and I have explained over this interview outside of that, none of this stuff is in those reports, or very little of it. Then you get a broader picture of it. But the law enforcement that we presented this to are not willing to look at anything beyond the official record that's in those reports. And that's what they lean on. Now, just one more thing, you said you haven't spoken with law enforcement yet. If you talk to BCSO, they're going to say, we don't comment on suicides out of sensitivity to the family, which is a cop-out. The sheriff told me to my face on March 10th, based on the evidence I've seen, I don't think a crime was committed. I said, what about all this extenuating evidence? And he said, sometimes weird things happen in a case and we never find out why. And if you're wondering why I use that inflection, that's how he talks. He treated us like we were 8 years old, and we are not on good terms with him. And he's up for re-election next year.
My friends are all telling me I should run for Boulder County Sheriff.
You should. Seriously. Well, you can use this platform as your campaign, your online campaign base.
Launch point. Yeah.
Launch point. Yeah.
There's so much more, guys. I mean, and we could keep you all day. I mean, there's just so much more. It's layer upon layer upon layer. And one of the difficulties is so many things going on, remaining focused on the goals. She didn't kill herself and somebody's responsible. It seems like with every passing week, it gets harder and harder to focus on what's important because of, I mean, no offense, but media, fundraising, homeless outreach, lawyers, private investigators, forensic pathologists, PR. I mean, it is more than a full-time job for both of us, just to manage all this stuff. It's crazy. And grieve,
Yeah. Not to mention that.
Well, and that's separate. I've said before, I mean, I keep these two things separate. The grief is with me for the rest of my life, and I'm learning to ride with that and learning how that works, and giving it the space and the respect that it deserves. Otherwise, I would burst into tears every time we did an interview. Mm-hmm. So that has to be separate, and I deal with that on my own terms and privately, and really work hard to keep that separate so that we can continue to solve this problem. I don't want to have a Justice for Megan sticker on my car, but I do,
We don't want to spend our Sunday afternoons passing out essentials bags in Boulder. Like, we hate going to Boulder, yet we think somebody in that community knows something, obviously, because
Although I like the for the most part, I like the people up there. I mean, they're good people, and they're very sympathetic to what's happened. But no, it's a full-time gig. My therapist said, you know, we talk about this every week. We talk about all these things going on. He said it's like Dynasty, like it's a serial, and every week I leave him with a cliffhanger, and I come the next week, and I'm like, you're not going to believe what happened. But he said, what's your most desired outcome here, or what in a perfect world, what would you like to see happen? And I said, I'd like to see the case break open, get a confession, somebody say something, so that we don't have to do this anymore. I mean, if we were to get something like that, then all this stops. We don't have to talk to attorneys every week. We don't have to deal with forensic pathologists. That's what I want. And that's kind of a pipe dream at this point, but I remain hopeful. I really do.
Well, thank you both so much for spending some time with us here today. And you are welcome anytime to come back on and discuss more details. I know we didn't hit everything here today, but this is certainly a journey that you guys are on, and we are here whenever you need to speak again.
We appreciate y'all taking the time.
we're hoping we have some information, or at least, because just to wrap up that whole piece about requesting that the coroner change the ruling, we're expecting to be able to have something in a couple weeks. If it's not changed through niceties, we're going to have to just go full media blitz, and like it's just going to be plastered everywhere. And then I think we'll have to go the legal avenue, which that's another, it's hard to ask people for money, right? But this is incredibly expensive. I don't know if you guys got to go see the Ellen Greensburg presentations at all, but her parents spent $700,000 trying to get it changed. And it's,
Wow.
Yeah, like it's, coroners have the end all be all. Like if they don't want to change it, they don't have to, and nobody can make them.
Yeah.
There's no oversight for them. And I think when this is all over and we can move on, I would love to maybe start some kind of legislation or get somebody to sponsor legislation to change that. It shouldn't, I have a boss. Everybody has a boss. Everybody has to answer to somebody. Coroners do not, or coroners and medical examiners. They don't. I mean, and everybody tells us the only way to get that, the only way to get to them is get them, stop the reelection, right? But that's not good enough, because then I still don't get what I need, which is tell the truth, Hopefully he'll do the right thing. I think he will. Joe thinks he will. But if he doesn't, then maybe you can help us. Put him on blast. Isn't that what they call it these days?
Thanks a lot for listening. Megan's story is so tragic, and our hearts are with Vanessa and Joe. Please follow the links in the show notes to stay up to date on the case. Thanks a lot.